Chris Haddad.
Yeah.
I appreciate you hanging out today, man.
I appreciate you hanging out today. Have we already started during this entire chat? Because I love doing that. I like for my own show, I like to have the show just start right in the middle of the conversation, just because I think it's more natural. It feels like a couple of friends hanging out instead of a very formal interview.
We have a rule in the studio and anytime we're recording that we never turn the cameras off.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
You just never turn the mics off, never turn the cameras off, because very often the comfortable, enjoyable conversation is when you're not recording, right?
I absolutely agree. I even tell people when I record my show, they'll start talking because they haven't seen them in a while. And I'm like, no, save it. Save it for when we're actually recording the show. Because that's the good stuff. That's what people really like, I think, is seeing people who are like friends talking about this stuff and having that kind of vibe and whatnot. Or at least, I don't know, I just like the more organic conversation aspect of it instead of like interviews as these things go.
Yeah, that was for me one of the core reasons that I rationalized building out a studio before I had really anything. It wasn't that I was like, oh, I need to record this thing and capture it.
Yeah.
I was just like, I have a lot of interesting conversations and I will probably want to hear them later, right? Like I will probably want to listen to them when I'm older and go back. I want to capture. And I wanted a cool place to hang out, but it's exactly
that. It seems like a cool place.
It's super fun. We got a little keyboard in the corner and some music and a full
set up some drums. Set up some drums, and when I come to Austin, we'll jam. It'll be fun. I haven't played.
I think this is very possible.
Yeah.
Question is, when do you come in Austin?
I don't know. I'm traveling again now. My wife is doing a lot better. COVID is calming down a bit, so I have a couple of trips planned. I'm actually looking for speaking gigs and things like that now. So if you know some shit that's going on in Austin or a mastermind or something, invite me down. I'll come drop some knowledge for people. Some knowledge bombs. Yeah.
I think we can figure that out.
I think so too. I like Austin.
So we met years ago, years and years ago, in fact, because
at least 10 now. Yeah.
I grew up in direct sales. And at some point I realized that I couldn't keep selling knives for my whole life. But more importantly, that I wanted to be really deliberate about my next step. So I built this list of criteria for what I wanted to do in the next venture that got me into credit card processing. But I was like beating on doors, trying to cold call and sell credit card processing, which I did, but is a grind. And I got to the point where I was at about 10 grand a month in residuals. And one of my clients reached out and said, hey, will you run operations for my company? And I'll give you equity in the company and it'll be great. And I thought, all right, this will be a good opportunity to put some money in the bank before I dive into credit card processing and formally start a company doing that. So this is the frame for how we met, because I partnered with this guy, came in and ran operations, and we hired you to write some magical copy.
You're going to do a launch. You're going to do a launch on a real estate investing. I think it was like a high-end real estate investing kind of thing, if I remember correctly. And and you guys hired me. I believe you paid me $30,000 to do all of the launch stuff because I was doing all the stuff with Jeff Walker, and I wrote all the stuff. And then later on, you had to make a really unpleasant phone call to me, which was you called me up and you were, because I had done all my end of the work, or most of it, up until the point where we were actually going to get the launch going. And then you called me up and said that the person who was your client had said that they needed the money back, basically. And my response was like, no, we're just not doing. I'm not going to do all this work for you for free. Also, that guy, total scam artist, right? Like, we don't need to mention who he actually is, but he strikes, like, looking back now, being older and wiser and in my mid 40s, which I think you are as well now, he just strikes me as the classic con man archetype. Right? Like absolute charming, can talk his ass off, will tell you anything you want to hear, and then just kind of disappears and goes off into the ether somewhere. So I don't know if there's like a level of sociopathy going there or just some narcissism and some lack of ability to understand that other people matter. But it's funny, and being in the marketing business, we run into these people all the time, right? Like we run into scammers, sociopaths, and generally horrible people on a regular basis because to a degree that this business can attract some of those people into it. So it's interesting kind of keeping your radar up about the assholes that are in the world out there.
Yes. Well, I think that there's like today we process credit cards for a tremendous number of information products, right? So
you built that company like crazy.
Yeah. We've got all these, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Grant Cardone, Frank Kern, Jeff Walker, Ryan Dice, a bunch of the OG internet marketers, a bunch of the new ones. And so my radar to this now is very, very sensitive. 10 years ago, it wasn't quite as sensitive.
Well, how old are you now? I'm 44. Are you like right around?
I'm 41.
41, a couple years younger. Yeah.
Yep. 41. And so that individual, the efficacy of the product, I'll say, yeah, I can't really validate that it was credible.
I went through the product. It was really nicely produced, right? I remember like it was like the packaging was great, and it came in this nice case because they sent me one when I was doing the work on it and stuff like that. But it was total fluff. It was all sizzle, no steak, really, as far as I could tell, and very expensive. Yeah.
Yes, and that sounds about right. And I think that you hit it on the head, which was I think that he was pathological. I think it was like he was convinced that what he was saying was true.
Yep.
And he had convinced himself of that. And that's really fascinating.
I think he had just been bullshitting his way through his whole life, right? I think he had just been bullshitting his way through his whole life and probably went through some pretty tough stuff when he was younger that led to that. Like, usually that comes from parents and stuff like that, and just had kind of gotten used to bullshitting everything all of the time and probably fell for it, because people do that, right? Like if you tell the same bullshit over and over again, eventually you'll start believing it. Just look at politics, for God's sake. Yeah.
Well, eventually, we parted ways because of several of these things. And I think as I got more clear on it, it became easier. And that was really when I started Easy Pay Direct. And then I think probably a couple years later, we reconnected.
In Florida.
Yes, right. And so your background, so that was when you were doing sort of copywriting for contract, right? And you were doing a bunch of copywriting.
So the short version is we had met when I was working with Jeff Walker when we met, right? So I'd done freelance copy for several years, gotten pretty good at it, was making, low six figures, $200,000-$300,000 a year or something like that as a freelancer, not doing bad at all. And then I started doing my Michael Fiore relationship advice stuff. Like my Michael Fiore went on me as Michael Fiore, went on Rachel Ray. And then we built out Text the Romance back, Text Your Ex back, Secret Survey, Language of Desire, built that company up to 8 figures over the course of a couple of years on ClickBank, just doing information marketing. And then I got super duper sick with Lyme disease and had to go to Florida for 7 freaking months to get treatment for Lyme disease. And you were in Florida, so we hung out a couple of times. And you got to hang out with me when I was at my mentally and physically least healthy, basically, of my entire life. Like my skin was ashen and I was just 20 pounds overweight and really angry and miserable and bipolar all the time and whatnot. So it was nice to have a friend I could hang out with there,
Well, and you know what? The funny thing about that is that I actually love that.
Oh, did you?
Well,
what is that?
I love that.
You like to watch me suffer. I understand.
That is not it. No, I love that because when people are in pain, they tend to be who they are in some form. Yeah. And sometimes they lash out and they're frustrated or they're it's a loud version of a particular emotion. Yeah. But I think you can get to know people in those moments. And frequently it either connects you or pushes you apart.
I agree. So, I think you and I definitely bonded during the whole thing. We bonded over that. We bonded over that one time you had that incredibly hot girl working with you at what was it? Yannick's thing, probably, whatever else. Yeah. I'm just remembering. She was a beautiful woman. I think we definitely bonded there. And for me, it was just, I was in such a miserable, horrible place in my life. And just having somebody I could hang out with from business world who knew me from that world, as opposed to just being the guy with the IV in his arm, desperately trying to stay alive while his body is betraying him, was pretty nice, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back into copy. You said a bunch of cool things. So, Jeff Walker, doing copywriting, for contract. And then that rolled into you having your own products. How did you let's go beginning, to start with, but then I want to talk about the building of your alter ego.
Yeah, sure.
ClickBank and stuff.
Absolutely.
But why copy in the first place?
Desperation. I had no other choice. So the short version is, and I've told these stories many, many times, but the short version is my dad died when I was 19. At the time, I thought I was going to get into traditional advertising because I've always been kind of creative, but didn't think you could make a living by writing creative stuff because I grew up in central Massachusetts where that simply was not a thing that made any sense. I didn't know any writers or anything like that. Anyway, I fell into copywriting after I got fired from a job writing greeting cards for a living when I was 26 or so, and just kind of fell into copy because I literally had nothing else I could do. I had been fired from every job I ever had. I had no real direction or drive for anything. marketing. And all of a sudden I discovered this copy thing and got sucked into direct marketing and went from making $30,000 gross one year to making like 220 grand the next year with copywriting, which was a pretty massive, awesome thing. And I did that for 5 or 6 years. I worked for a bunch of people you've heard of and kind of became A-lister, I guess, relatively quickly, which was pretty funny because I had no self-esteem at the time. But then I did this thing that the really smart copywriters do. Is I woke up one day and realized I was making other people really, really rich, and I wasn't getting rich myself. I was doing fine. I was making more than I ever thought I would. But basically, if you know Jay Diebold, right? Jay Diebold and Alan Sultanic. Do you know those guys?
No.
Okay, well, they're internet marketers, very successful guys. And they had hired me to write a letter called Mobile Money Machines, which was a magic software ClickBank thing way back in the day. And they gave me 25 grand for it, which is good fucking money. Never going to complain about making 25 grand for what was about a day and a half of work. I'll take it. But then they did the launch and they did like $10 million in sales in their first month. And I asked Jay at one point, I'm like, hey, Jay, man, how's the offer going? He's like, oh, dude, it's fucking crushing it. It's crushing it. He told me some numbers. I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And I said, you should send me a bonus. He's like, yeah, man, I'm going to send you a bonus. And he did. He sent me a check for $5 grand. And like,
which was nice of him.
It was nice. Listen, man, that's a nice watch. Like whatever, like cool. You know, I've had somebody else send me a nice watch. It's actually right here. That was good too. But that just kind of broke me a little bit where I was like, holy fucking shit. I wrote this and they're making all this money. And I'm done. Like I made my 30 grand off it, but I had nothing coming the next month. Right. Like I was just trading money for time, money for time, money for time. It was a lot of money for a relatively small amount of time, but it was still money for time. And that's what got me off my ass to finally start doing my own offers. So I created one called Text Your Wife Into Bed, just because I was single at the time. And being a writer by nature and kind of a horrifyingly erotic person in other ways, I ended up just like creating this product because I was talking to Mike Hill one day about doing a texting product, a sexting product. And he was like, you should do one for married guys. And I'm like, yeah, I'll call it Text Your Wife Into Bed. So I created that offer, having no idea what I was doing, put up a VSL, and had the most hilarious experience when I put it out because I saw people that we know from business world buying the product. I'm not going to mention their names, but they were people. And then I had like various friends of ours like writing me for like specific advice on what to say and how to say it and all that other kind of shit. But that kind of got things going. And originally I was working in the male side of the niche, like basically pickup. So I had Text Your Wife Into Bed. And then we had one called Oral Fixation, which is about how to get a girl to want to give you a blowjob. The most brilliant idea for product I ever had, I personally think. I was like, what should I use as an upsell? Well, that's what guys want. And then
hold on.
Yeah.
Interlude here, because before we jumped on, I actually found a headline from that specific offer.
Oh, did you? Oh, please, let me tell you.
And the headline from that offer is, what has 2 thumbs and loves blowjobs? Your wife, girlfriend, and every woman you know, ... after you watch this astonishing free video.
That is a fucking good headline, I have to say. That's a pretty, that offer did pretty well for us. But I did that. And then I spoke at Jeff Walker's product launch formula event that year, back in 2009, I guess, 2009, 2010. And I spoke at that, did really well at it. I had asked Jeff if he would have me on his stage, and he did, and it went really, really well. And afterwards, this woman named Amal Wagner came up to me and said, I want to put you on television. And I was like, who are you and what do you mean? But she was a PR agent who'd worked with a lot of people in like the Harv Eker kind of world, things like that. And she said that she thought I had a certain level of charisma. She wanted to see what we could do. She asked me what I had. I said, I have Text Your Wife Into Bed. She said, that's too dirty. What else you got? And so we just came up with the idea for Text the Romance Back, which was the kind of cleaner, more female-oriented version of that. And the short version is that got me on the Rachel Ray show. There's a clip. If you go on YouTube and search for Michael Fiore, Rachel Ray,